Hey everybody, it's Joe Chaffee here on this Monday night. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Sorry for the late start tonight, but had a few things to take care of, and now that they're done, we can get the live stream underway. I'm not used to doing these 9:30 live streams. Usually, I'm doing Facebook around this time. So let's get going here. We've got this storm system that is impacting now the east. We had it move across the Midwest. We had blizzard or near blizzard conditions in and around Chicago this morning. In fact, one of our regulars, 99 Wolves, said where he is in Chicago, and I'm guessing he's on the north side. They had about 9 to 11 inches of snow. I noticed the snow amounts this morning that were up were before the final total. So I'm just going to see if there is some late numbers here. So O'Hare got 8.4 inches of snow. The Midway 4.9 inches. When I checked them this morning, they were at 3, so they got an additional 2. So they at least hit the bottom end number of 5. The Rockford, Illinois got 11.7, and it is now the largest snowstorm on record in the month of November for Rockford, Illinois. 11.7 inches sets a daily record and a November calendar day snowfall record. The This is also the snowiest winter on record. The snowiest November on record in the city of Rockford. So it shows you the extent of when you get the snowfalls here this time of year, even in places where you think, well, they normally get snow, it is a bit out of the range of normal. Okay, so you snow lovers have to be patient. We're still not even into December yet, but we do have, we have some interesting weather patterns setting up going forward. I think there's going to be a lot of intrigue and mystery along the way and figuring out just exactly where all this is going. In the meantime, let's take a look at tonight's weather system, which the rain from it is actually just about ended over me. You can see on the radar here that much of the rain now is north and east of New York City and into eastern Connecticut and over Rhode Island and heading up into the Boston area. And of course, now that this moisture is pumping northward, we're seeing some of that getting into northern New England because I think they're next in line to get some heavy snow out of this. So we'll take a look at. We're going to start off with the watches and warnings that are up tonight across the Northeast, and also some leftover warnings that are still up in and around the Great Lakes. So here we go. Let's bring this up to the top here and we'll take a look. Now, the main action now shifts to upstate northeastern New York and into interior northern New England. We have winter storm warnings up for much of northeastern New York, but you can see that there are parts of counties that are out of it. These are areas that probably are either have less elevation because some of this is going to be elevation driven. We don't have a whole lot of cold air here that we're dealing with. If you look at the temperatures at the moment up through this part of New York State, we're actually up in the middle 30s. A lot of spots are above freezing, and even a couple of spots there in on the New York side of the Vermont border are sitting with temperatures up close to 40. So you do have those winter storm warnings toward Lake Ontario, winter weather advisories near the lake, warnings inland, and then you get into the mountains here in Vermont, and of course through much of New Hampshire and on up into a good chunk of Maine. You have winter storm warnings up over there with advisories down almost, but not quite to the coast. So this is really a sizable snowfall for interior northern New England, and not, with the exception being the coastal areas, and of course central southern New England, not an issue here. We still, by the way, are dealing with coastal flood issues. We've got coastal flood warnings for Long Island, for the shores of Connecticut, the Long Island Sound shores of Connecticut down into Westchester County and into the Bronx in parts of New York City. We also had flood watches up, but those flood watches are done. But we are continuing to see flood advisories and some local flood warnings. Some of this was left over actually still from Saturday, believe it or not. Back to winter storm warnings with the winds that are going to be coming in around this storm when it gets up into northern New England. They're going to get some widespread snowfall in the counties in northwestern PA and southwestern New York, and then even extending into northeastern Ohio. We're seeing a winter weather advisory there for the northeastern county there of Ohio, and then you get into the warnings as you go to the north and east of there. So pretty busy here. Considering how cold it's been, uh, and the kind of weather that we've seen so far this month. I mean, this is really, as I said, exceptional. In the Northwest, a couple of winter weather advisories. We've got some flood watches up, along with wind issues going on up and down the coast here. We've got high wind warnings up and down the Washington and Oregon coast with this next storm that is coming in. And we've also got winter storm watches that have been posted for much of the mountains in interior California. You have all sorts of high surf advisories and wind issues going all the way down the coast. Cold around the Great Lakes tonight in the wake of the storm that has moved through. Temperatures in the teens and even some and single digits showing up in the Dakotas and on up into northern Minnesota. So this is cold air that's coming down, and it's actually going to be colder than normal for a good part of the rest of this week in the eastern part of the U.S. Low pressure, the old low, has now moved up toward Lake Ontario and continues to weaken. It's occluded out. And the secondary low now is beginning to take over as of 7 o'clock this evening on the surface plot. The low was sitting just east of Sandy Hook along the coast of New Jersey there at about 40 and roughly about 73, I would say, or 72 and a half, 73. And you've got the rain that's north and east of there going up into southeastern New England. And of course, now we're going to start to see the colder air come in behind it. But the bulk of the rain, at least as of 9:40 from New York City southward, is pretty much a done deal. The radar loop, this is from earlier, so we can get a good look at when the rain was starting to come in. And we had some pretty heavy rains flare up on the radar that came in just as the evening rush hour commute was getting underway. But now, of course, we're seeing some improvement, and come on, stop. There you go. We'll see some improvement here with the rain out of New York City. Still have some back edge showers, though, in the northeastern PA. And of course, you start to get into the colder air in northern Vermont and New Hampshire. That starts to turn over into some snow. And this cold air gets drawn in on the backside of this on Tuesday. Once that coastal low completely takes over, that's when you'll start to see a lot of cold air sweeping across into New England. So first things first, we hang on one second. Sorry about that. Hang on, folks. Just having some minor issues here with my computer doing its own thing. And there we go. We've got the new NAM up, so we might as well take a look at this. Whenever you get these situations where you've got primary, secondary, where the primary low goes up to the west and falls apart, the secondary low takes over. Once that secondary low takes over, how fast it takes over usually dictates ultimately who gets how much snow out of it. And this system is the secondary is taking over relatively quickly. By the secondary low taking over, what happens is, if you look at these isobars, follow the isobars here coming in off the Atlantic and then running northwestward toward Lake Ontario. That's the primary low that's sitting over Lake Ontario. So you've got this sort of stretched out flow. As the secondary low takes over, that northern and western side disappears, and suddenly you've got cold air that gets swept around and into the circulation and drawn southeastward. So you wind up seeing, as you see here on the NAM, as we go through the overnight, all the rain that's up in upstate New York. See all that rain there? It just gradually changes over to snow as the low draws down the cold air. The primary low is completely gone. By tomorrow morning, you're sitting with a fairly intense 987 low near Boston, and of course, snowing through a good chunk of Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, away from the coastal areas. That low is going to sit there all day Tuesday, just kind of really at a crawl. It's got to wait for the upper low, the upper support to come around and start moving out. And by the way, this is also a good example. I want you to watch here. You've got primary, secondary, okay? You've got this primary low tonight that has disappeared, and then it occludes out, the secondary low forms. The same thing is going to happen here. This low is going to occlude out. The isobars start stretching out into the Atlantic south of Nova Scotia. You're going to get another wave that develops, and that wave, then you're going to have primary, secondary again. The primary, the 987 primary, Wednesday morning, is dying a slow death in Maine, and there's your secondary low, and that winds up intensifying. And if the NAM is right, it throws back heavy snows into Nova Scotia and New Brunswick and back into Maine from the east Wednesday night and Thursday. So pretty interesting, because you do see this happen every once in a while, especially when you're in a blocking situation where the lows are not really getting out of the way. The block is kind of holding things in place. And here's the upper air to see what it looks like. We don't have a North America view here to give you the full perspective, but we can see at least what's happening here in the east, starting with today, of course. So there's our storm system. You got the trough kind of lifts up and then opens up as more energy swings down and around. See how you have got one upper low in that's sitting in western Massachusetts, another upper low back through the Great Lakes. This is where, if, as we've been saying for the last couple of days, it would be a big problem if this trough were stretched out further to the west and there was more room, and then you could wind up getting a storm developing, say, much closer to the coast and moving northward. But you can't have that here. It's the flow is too west southwest from the Carolinas, so you're going to get that low to develop out in the Atlantic, and that impacts Nova Scotia and eventually impacts Maine as that storm develops and starts to throw energy back to the east. It's going to take another couple of days for this whole upper low to finally get out of the way, and it's not really until late Thursday evening that it's beginning to pull out. So for the Northeast, by the way, and down into the northern mid-Atlantic states, with this low pressure that's going to be sitting up in Maine for the next several days, the wind's going to be cranking here Tuesday and Wednesday, and probably into a good chunk of Thursday before things start to settle down with respect to that. And as far as the temperatures are concerned, as we look at from the standpoint of above normal and below normal, we are going to see now this next shot of below average temperatures coming in beginning on Tuesday and keeping it mostly below average right in through Thursday night and probably Friday as well. It's cold air. It's not the cold air that we saw back last week, which is a good thing. That was really a rare event to see air that cold, but it certainly will be cold enough to keep temperatures restricted and below average, of course. So we're looking, I think, at temperatures up for the coastal areas anyway, into the low 40s by day, maybe a little bit higher on Tuesday, but a little low end of that upper 30s and low 40s, say Wednesday and Thursday, and nighttime lows in the 20s to low 30s. And you can see the extent of the 20s and low 30s by Thursday morning down into the Carolinas, and you have 30s down almost to the Florida Panhandle. This shot of cool air is going to make its way down through South Florida. They're probably going to have a couple of days where temperatures won't be getting much out of the 60s in South Florida. So it's a pretty fair and fair push of cool air that's coming into the east. Now, we are beginning to see, I want to just take a look, is the new icon has just started, so that really isn't going to help us. And we're 2/3 through the NAM, so I think we can go to the GFS here from late this afternoon. And I'm going to start with the upper air. Okay, so you can see uh, put it up on the paint box so we can illustrate this. Give me 1 second here to set this up. And can't seem to get my paint box up. Where is it? Let me try it again one more time. For some reason, I cannot get the paint box to do what it's supposed to do. All right, so there it is. Let's try it one more time. Is it going to be there? Yep, finally got it on the third time was the charm. Okay, so here's your this is the upper air as of today. Okay, so what do we got? Well, first off, here's your block. Okay, so here's your blocking high. All right, so with that upper high being there, this displaces the jet stream way to the south. You know, you've got a ridge here in the west, but the strongest part of the jet stream is way to the south. We have a ridge up through the northwestern part of Canada. We have our trough here in the eastern part of the U.S. But as we have said many times, you know, when you say trough of the east ridge in the west, the east is a big place and the west is a big place. So you have to be specific. You need the trough of the east, and you need the trough where the axis of the trough is somewhere closer to 80 degrees west and not out at about 85 or 90. That's good for Chicago, and Chicago benefited it today, and so did much of northern Illinois from the standpoint of snow, and then parts of interior Michigan. Away from, I'm sorry, let's say central and northern Michigan as opposed to southern Michigan. But this is the kind of blocky nature that we have with that upper height of the north in Greenland displacing everything to the south. And, you know, you've got this jet in the Pacific, by the way, that is going to be screaming with energy coming into the West Coast for a while, going into the long term. So this is kind of important because if we get a setup where the flow is split, that you get this Pacific energy coming in, and at the same time you've got cold air coming down from the north. That is going to become increasingly problematic as we go through the month of December, and I think that's something that we're going to have to look at seriously down the road, because uh, even as little as a week or 2 weeks from now, as normal average temperatures drop a degree every 3 days, you know, you're going to start to have impact when the average high now is still up above 50. But you know what? In about another 2 weeks, the average high in New York City is going to be down to about 45, and by the end of the month, it'll be down to 39. So that's a big change, and as you know, as it's a time of where the atmosphere normally gets colder. And if you look at the upper air here, that jet in the southern part stays pretty active and pretty far to the south. While the block is gone, you actually do have a little bit of a cold connection, not a strong one, that comes from northwest Canada into the northeast. It's keeping the ridge in the east from flying all the way up. So there is some Canadian influence here. And in fact, we do have around December 5th, 6th, what looks like a pretty strong trough setting up in the east. And also, we do have this split flow, which is pretty interesting. Let me bring that back up for you. Uh, so here you go. So here's the split flow. All right. Just want to make sure you guys are seeing everything correctly here. So this is what a split flow looks like. All right. So here's a like I can probably move. Let's see if I can move this. No, I can't. Okay. So we'll have to do it this way. All right. So here is. Okay, you have that flow in the Pacific, flow out into the Atlantic, big storm out here in the Atlantic, trough here in the east. So you also have, if the model's correct, there's this upper high that builds into Alaska from the Gulf of Alaska, but you've got the jet undercutting it. So you've got this strong flow in from the Pacific with short wave after short wave coming in into the west. But meanwhile, you also have this connection here that comes down from Canada and drives down cold air into the U.S. This is a pretty interesting upper air if it gets to this point and looks like this. It is it's dynamic enough and holds possibilities down the road. Uh, if we have this pattern toward the end of December and going into January, look out because you're going to wind up seeing a pretty active stormy pattern and probably uh, snow in a lot of areas out of this. And you've got the trough pretty far to the south, so eventually you could wind up seeing that colder air getting down into some of the southern states as we go through the month. That's again assuming that this pattern holds, which we don't know that it will. But it's very interesting that the models actually keep wanting to show some semblance of blockiness here out in the Atlantic, and then of course the whole Arctic region, all through this whole region up here, showing a tendency for higher than normal pressures and higher than normal height values in the upper air. So I think we need to pay attention to that going forward in the longer term. So we'll come back to the map now. Let's bring that up and show you what the GFS came up with today. Actually, what we can do first off is go back to the NAM because we have the new NAM up. So standing by with the new NAM here. So this is by Friday morning on the upper air on the NAM, by the way. You see the trough in the east pulls out, new trough coming into the west, and there's some weak energy that's moving into the Great Lakes and Ohio Valley. You can barely find a kink in the isobar here. I'm sorry, in the heights here from the Great Lakes to the southeast, but there is a weak little short wave, and the models were trying to show a weak moisture field coming across the Ohio Valley along about Friday. You can see it here on the NAM, by the way. It's not really the most impressive area in the world. Most impressive area of moisture that you'll ever see. Okay, so there's your low in the east. Look at this big storm coming into the west, into the northwest of Northern California. The low in the east just kind of sits there. You've got energy pushing eastward into the northern plains and Great Lakes, and then into the eastern lakes and western PA, western New York by Friday morning. But again, looks very weak, and you have stronger energy coming into California on Thursday. Looks like a nice little low there with intensity, with rains and heavy snows all the way down into Southern California. That low is going to be coming into the east next weekend, at least the way the models have played it out. The longer range European and GFS were a bit different in how they handled all this. The European was kind of having a pretty deep low, keeping it far to the west. The GFS has got another one of these primary secondary situations for Sunday into Monday. Not a whole lot of cold air around, relatively speaking, by the time we get into the weekend. But as that goes by, slightly colder air builds in. Then you get another low that goes to the lakes going into Tuesday. This is December 4th and 5th of primary, secondary. There's a pattern of these things. There's one after another after another. It's a series of lows that the models want to take to the lakes. And that is actually pretty typical of what you see during the latter part of November into the early part of December. Storm tracks are usually further to the west unless you've got some serious blocking going on. And then gradually, as you move through deeper into December and start getting into late December, January, the tracks start shifting further south and east. And actually, even in the long range, models keep telegraphing some kind of gale center off the coast there. Who knows if that's right or wrong? But you get the idea, folks. We're going to have a pretty busy pattern going forward. I think we're going to have some opportunities as we go through the month of December that you might not be seeing yet on the models themselves. You may be seeing hints of them now, but you're not going to see them in the long range this early. But I think maybe around the middle of the month, we could wind up with a situation of cold air, enough cold air around, and maybe a system where you might get a shot in places. Hey, we already had our shot down here on the coast. Maybe we'll have a better setup come down the road in a couple of weeks. But if you're a snow lover, you have to like the volatility that you're seeing. Chess pieces are going to continue to be moved around, and that uh, that'll at least to keep you occupied and looking every day for sure. Okay, so welcome everybody. Again, sorry for the late start, and thanks for being here. What's the deal with these cutters? Hopefully, the frequency of them keeps up like this when the track shifts to the coast. Uh, you know, it's very it's typical, as I said, Timothy. For this time of year, you see more of the cutters to the lakes, unless you've got some kind of serious blocking going on. But in a lot of years where you see active cutters, they eventually wind up seeing the storm track shifting to the east at some point, and I think we have that to look forward to. James Vitale, major flooding on some roads near you, water up to people's houses. Where are you, James? I'm sorry, I don't remember. And I don't live right next to the water either. I'm pretty far away. So I'm guessing from coastal flooding, you're talking about either Long Island or New Jersey. So just let me know. 99 Wolves, you got all your snow today, which should make you happy. Uh, let's see. Reaver, what does Reaver have to say tonight? Oh, he's stay because you got no power there. 99 Wolves. How are you watching? 9.9 in Arlington Heights. Yeah, Bobby Livingsworth. I'm sorry. Tomorrow night we'll be back to a normal 7 o'clock ish live stream. Okay. Um, LSD was 2 feet under last night. Lakeshore Drive. Okay, gotcha. With the wind coming in off of Lake Michigan. Hey, I saw you had gusts to 50. Uh, uh, I know it's typical, and I like it for now. Looks really promising. You got that low for Tuesday and Wednesday that's going to be sitting up in Maine. It might throw back some snow back up at the northeastern New York. I don't know. It might be just barely too. You may be just a little too far south for it, but you're not going to be that far away. So keep an eye on the radar because some of that might wind up pulling back. Later Tuesday night, Wednesday into Wednesday night until the whole thing pulls away to the northeast. Ruru, beautiful weather here, you in South Florida. Enjoy it. Okay, it's going to get a little on the cool side later in the week. Coating of snow in Dayton on the backside, says Jakey Snakey. Good for you. Getting the snow cover in North America continues to run at a pretty much a record clip here. So again, remember the time of year. You're seeing repeat places breaking records for November monthly snowfalls, daily snowfall records. This is what we're seeing here is unusual, and it might be a forerunner of what's to come for much of the Northeast and the Great Lakes in the next couple of months. That Hey, I don't know. The pattern could flip on the dime in mid December and go warm and dry. Who knows? But we'll just keep watching it as it goes forward. Mark Gladfelter, if we keep getting the storm after storm and they do shift southeast, then we might get a winter storm after winter storm. Well, yeah, I mean it's the atmosphere is, the jet is trying to get pretty far to the south, but the trough axis right now is to the west, and that is not, it's not far enough east, so you get these lows that are going to be coming out, and you're getting primaries that are going west of the Appalachians, and that's not good for holding cold air east of the Appalachians. You want the lows to come east of the apps and redevelop. As long as they keep going to the west, you're going to have these secondaries develop, but they're going to develop too far north and too late, and too far west. They're going to form they're going to form in Chesapeake Bay instead of offshore, and then they're going to run northward just inland of the coast to New York City, to just west of Boston. Tracks like that. As long as you've got the primaries going west of the Appalachians, that's what will happen. But if blocking starts to show up, or even if you don't get blocking, if you get the NAO, which is going to be backing up to neutral, if it kind of straddles the neutral line or goes a little bit negative, that might be enough to cause the systems to track a little bit further to the south. So we're going to keep watching what the teleconnections do over the next couple of days. All right, folks, going to cut it short here. Thanks for being here. I know it was kind of a late start tonight, and I appreciate your patience. Just real quick, let me just do a little hawking. Those of you who are in the northern New Jersey, New York City, Lower Hudson Valley, Long Island, and coastal Connecticut, and you've got an Android device, so your mobile device is an Android, you can download my free weather app, okay, and enjoy it. You get my website posts on a nice fast loading platform with there's I think just one tiny little ad on it, and that's it. It's a free app, so have at it, okay? And the still working with Apple about trying to figure out what it is they want us to do in order to put it on the in the Apple Store. So soon as that's out, I'll let you know and give you the link to that. Also, it is Cyber Monday, and for that matter, it's also Cyber Week. Uh, apparently, there's a lot of places are going to be having sales all week long. Just want to let you know that an easy way to support my channel, which really doesn't cost you a dime if you're shopping on Amazon, you can use the Amazon link here that I just put up, and Amazon will throw me back a little bit of coin for sending you there, and I can get a couple of cigars out of it. So thanks very much for those of you who have done that. And one other thing is my Patreon platform, which is a subscription-based platform. It's just $2 a month, and you'll get weather, exclusive weather posts, exclusive private live streams for Patreon members, and we usually do those in the morning. And you can message me at any time for a timely response. And there's the link to that. As I said, that starts at a cost of a cup of coffee a month, about $2 a month. So there you have it. Thanks for being here. We'll be back tomorrow morning. The Patreon folks figure around, I don't know, 9:30, 10 o'clock, or maybe I'll wait till the GFS starts. So just watch for the link that I post up in Patreon for when we're going to do the live stream. And then tomorrow night, we'll be back to normal YouTube live streams at 7 o'clock Eastern Time. And there won't be a Joe and Joe show today because I'm not there. So tomorrow, we're both there together, and we'll have a Joe and Joe weather show on Facebook tomorrow evening at 9:15. All right, folks, have a great evening. Thanks for being here. Appreciate your patience, and we'll see you tomorrow.